Hey everybody, welcome to the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina, Kristina. This is where we read books, talk about books, also on Fridays, and it's Friday, talk about Star Trek Next Generation. We go through the episodes, we have character progression, we get to know the characters better. Each episode, someone goes through a conflict. So we have a single episode each week. So we are in season 5. We are on disc 1. We did part 2 of Redemption last week. We're going to do DARMOK today. We'll do Ensign Row, our new I keep forgetting what her thing is. Forgive me, I forget. And all of you out there screaming at me going, it's this thing. I forget what she was. And the Silicon Avatar is the week after. So this is all a disc 1. So I hope you're sticking with me for it all. And today we will do DARMOK. Now, there isn't much to this episode, but I just wanted to say that usually if you're meeting new people for the first time, and they don't speak the same language as you need to either find a translator that will understand both of you and able to translate, or you're going to have to establish communication between the two of you. Like me and your name, me, Chris. You point to the person, get a name at least. Then you got a name. Maybe share, would you like some fruit? This is an apple. A for apple. Red. It's red and it's an apple. What do you call this? What's your term for this? What's your term for the color? Apple. Start learning each other's words. Orange. Start learning each other's language. Start a communication. Start with simple phrases. Start with objects. Hand or face, mouth. Start with simple communication and then work into something, longer and more difficult. It takes time to learn each other's language, to get familiar with each other. That takes time. These people want to jump into it, and as things don't go too well. So we start off with a captain's voiceover. Captain's log, stardate 45047.2. The Enterprise is en route to the uninhabited El Adrel system. Its location is near the territory occupied by an enigmatic race known as the Children of Tama. So we start off the episode in the observation lounge, and Picard is telling Data and Riker and Worf and Troy and why Picard is making the presentation instead of somebody else. I don't know. But he's saying apparently the Tamarians arrived at Eldra for nearly 3 weeks ago. They have been transmitting a subspace signal towards Federation space ever since. Data says it's a standard mathematical progression. It does not carry a specific message. Riker says, but they wanted us to know they were there. Picard walks over to the table. Data says, Riker says, Picard says, well, Data says the signal is a standard mathematical progression. It does not carry a specific message. Riker says, but they wanted us to know they were there. Picard says, apparently so, number one. Starfleet believes that their presence is an attempt at communication. Data says, Federation vessels have encountered the Tamarian ships 7 times over the past 100 years. Each meeting went without incident. However, formal relations were not established because communication was not possible. Riker asks why. Data says the children of Tama were called incomprehensible by Captain Silvestri of the Shikamaru. Other accounts were comparable. Worf says a cause for concern. For all we know, they could be threatening our border. Troy says everything in the previous encounter suggests a peaceable race. We have to start from there. Picard says agreed. I appreciate your prudence, Mr. Worf, but Starfleet believes the Tamarians have been extended a hand. We must do the same. Riker says the children of Tamara. I've heard rumors about them for years. I lost my place. Picard says, indeed, are they truly incomprehensible? In my experience, communication is a matter of patience, imagination. I would like to believe these are qualities we have sufficient measure. Data said, next scene, sorry. So then we're talking to the other ship. They have arrived. We're opening communications. And they start with Ra and Ja at Lunga, Ra of Luina under two moons, Jer of Underbaya of Crossroads. And Picard's like asking people, and he's like, Counselor, Troy says, I sense nothing but good intentions from them, Captain. Picard says, Data says the Tamarians seem to be stating the proper names of individuals and locations. Picard says, yes, but what does it mean? Data says, I'm at a loss. Picard says, Captain, would you be prepared to consider the creation of a mutual non-aggressional pact between our two peoples, possibly leading to a trade agreement and cultural interchange? Does that sound like a reasonable course of action to you? Excuse me. These are new people to you. You do not understand their language. So apparently they do not understand our language either. If what they're saying to you doesn't make sense, then what you're saying to them will not make sense too. And to use these long, complicated words is useless. Maybe going, me, you, friends, together, talk, communicate, talk, sit down, eat, have a meal, do some simple, let's be friends, shake hands or hug or some other gesture there. But no, Picard comes out all these big long terms. They have no clue what he's saying. He has no clue what they're saying. I mean, come on. I'm just saying. So they do some more back and forth, and it keeps going. They keep going, Kama beneath Motesh or the River Tamak in the winter. Picard says, impressions number one. Riker says, it appears they're trying their best. And Picard says, as are we. Shikaka, when the walls falls, and he's proposing this thing, and we don't realize it till later. He's trying to tell them that he wants to be friends too, but he's telling Picard in his own way. And he doesn't know how to communicate that with Picard, so he's doing it the way that his species knows. See, our species, technically, sort of, kind of, have a talk, have a discussion, sit down, share a meal. Would you like some fruit? Have a little apple, have a little tangerine, discuss, get to know each other, get hands out, shake hands or something, shake hands, become friends, open communication. But they're doing is, look, we're going to take guy A and guy B. See, guy A was on the ocean and guy B was on the ocean, and they get to an island and they try to open a communication, and they fought a war together and they become friends because they fought a war together and they joined, but they're not getting this across to Picard, and Picard's not getting across to them. So the guy says to his guy, we're going down to the surface and we're going to do what they did to get friendship. So apparently, the captain of that ship is going, look, first officer, we need to go down to the surface and we're going to reenact what happened to DARMOK at TANAGRA. And the guy doesn't like it, but they end up doing it. So both captains get beamed down to the surface. And he's like, DARMOK and JALAD. And Picard's like, you want to fight? And he's like, DARMOK and JALAD. And he's like, I don't know who DARMOK and JALAD are. I certainly didn't come here to make war with you. And the guy gives him the dagger, and Picard throws it back, and the guy's like, you're not getting it. Well, Picard isn't getting it, because in our world, would be sitting down to a meal and getting to know someone over a meal. And what Picard doesn't understand is that there's a beast on the planet. The other guy knows there's a beast on the planet, but Picard doesn't know it yet. And the guy says he wants to come together. If we both fight this beast together, that'll give us a common ground and we'll move forward from there. In our society, sit down and have a meal and we'll move on from there. We'll have a conversation, we'll have some talk, get to know each other, learn our terms. Me, Chris, you, what's your name? You know, have an apple. A is for apple, or B is for boy, or C is for cat. These are, this is clothing. Face. Learn some similar terms. Learn each other's language. But Picard it takes him a while. He seems a little down. I know it's plot line, but he doesn't get the fact that the guy wants him to join with him to fight this beast that will give them something in common, so that the walls can fall between them, so that the wall is a barrier and one is on each side of it, and when the wall comes down they can join together and go forward together. But Picard isn't getting all this. Ensign Rowe is Bajoran. I'm a little off it today. So Riker he tries to call Captain Picard. The thing isn't going through. Data says no, the Temerians are projecting a particle sustaining beam into the atmosphere. The result is a hyper-ionization. The virtual disrupts all EM and subspace characters. And Riker says, well, they can't communicate with their guy either, and they won't be able to beam anyone through their field. Data says that's correct. However, they left sensor frequencies on. Then they'll be able to tell what's going on. Analysis, Mr. Worf. What the hell is going on down there? Worf says a contest perhaps between champions, our captain against theirs. Riker says, but theirs was armed. Now, Worf has sort of got it right. It's not that their side doesn't want the captains to fight each other. He wants the captains to fight a common enemy together so they can become friends once they have conquered the enemy together. Unfortunately, the Enterprise trying to rescue Captain Picard disrupts that, or sort of kinda. But it's their choice to leave him down there. Well, we haven't gotten that to yet. But anyways, ouch. So, once again, we're on the surface, and once again, the guy's like, DARMOK and JALAD, and Picard's like, you want to fight me? Is that a challenge? And he's like, DARMOK and JALAD, and he goes, I don't know who they are. But the guys, he has this chance of communication, and he's doing it the only way he knows how, taking the two guys, and he's trying to tell them to come together to be friends, but Picard doesn't get that. He doesn't bring his hands together. He's like, he wants the two men to bond over a common enemy, but Picard doesn't get that for a while. So the guy's going on about DARMOK and JALAD when the wall fell so they could cross it and they could be friends. But it's taking a while, and they go at this a while. So then Riker's trying to contact them again, and Data says sensors show that Captain Picard and the Temerian are in good health. Riker says, hail them. Worf says on screen, Rokia says, "You're holding our captain and want him released." And the guy again is trying to tell him, "Tarmac and Tanagra, Tarmac and Tanagra." And they get at it and they end up going, "Screw it." And they just let it go. So they decide to send a shuttle down. So then Picard had tried to start a fire and was having trouble and it went out and he starts freezing. I don't know why he doesn't try a second time. Maybe he's tried numerous times and it keeps going out at him. But the guy gives Picard fire so Picard can keep himself warm. And he's like, "When the falls fell," and he throws him the wood and it's timber, and he's like, "Timber, does that mean fire? Does that mean fire? Arms wide." And the guy's like, it's his version of a handshake or a greeting or something. But Picard doesn't get that for a while. It takes too long for Picard to get it. It's just, if you watch my show, when I don't know a term or when I want you to finish your own sentence, I go, it's just whatever you make of it. You know, they just keep going on about the same things and keep saying it over and over and over and over again. And the character gets very frustrated with Picard because Picard's not getting it until it's too late. So, like I said, then they decide to send a shuttle down. So then Riker decides that he's sending a shuttle down, and he is a first officer supplemental. I am sending a shuttle to find Captain Picard, gambling that the Tamarians will sit tight rather than risk an exchange of phaser fire. He's a little wrong. Now, I'm always a little worried, but it shouldn't have, I was not, it was not anything to worry about. But whenever you see an extra on Star Trek, you're thinking, oops, there's our victim for the scene. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to get hurt. Someone's going to die. And she's going to be our casualty. Although she even has a name at this point, which is interesting. So they take the shuttle down and they're going through the levels in the atmosphere and they're saying some stuff back and forth. And the other ship fires on the shuttle and just disrupts one part of their thing, so they will not be able to take off again. So Riker tells them to come back to the Enterprise. I know it was plot line. But Worf could have gone down there. They would have had medical supplies on the shuttle. Maybe they would have been able to tend to stuff, offer protection, shelter, warmth until this other thing went through. But no, Riker orders them back to the Enterprise, so they're unable to provide any kind of assistance. Maybe they didn't want to lose a shuttlecraft, but it would have been providing shelter and medical supplies and food for the captain and his friend. They could have shared a meal. We could have shared a basket of fake fruit. So the shuttle gets damaged and they end up going back to the Enterprise. So when we get back to the sorry, there's a hair. The Enterprise, Geordi is now giving a presentation. He says, "I'm pretty sure I can punch up the annular confinement beam enough to transport the captain to the field. It's going to take me at least a full day to do it." Troy says, "Picard could be dead by then." Worf says, "I do not believe so. I have confidence in the ability as a warrior. He will be victorious." Troy says, "You're assuming this is some sort of challenge ritual. We can't be certain of that." Riker says, "Agreed. We're only making educated guesses about their motivation, no more than that." Worf said, "Then why do we wait? If we attack the ship now, they will not be able to maintain their scattering field." Riker says, "Which might start a shooting match, for all we know a war, and will still might not be able to save the captain." Worf said it would end the stalemate. Riker says it's too much of a risk. I'll take the course when it's the last one. Who the hell are these people? There's got to be some way to get through to them. Data says, as I've said, with further study it may be possible. Why haven't you started studying already when you first met them, before you even got to the planet? Why did you not learn all you could about these people before you got to the planet? Riker says, then do it. Deanna, help him. I want something by 0900 hours. So, the captain wakes up the next day, and the field was open between the two of them. But as I'm not gonna, because it just takes too long. But as he's walking to the guy's field, he's walking through all these trees, and I'm like, excuse me, the space between the two of you is all open. You just couldn't have gone straight. But no, he goes around like this and comes out the rear, and he examines the guy's area, his little doodads, finds his notebook. The guy comes back, and then they go to the next scene. So the next scene, Troy and Data are reviewing the footage of Tarmok at Tanagra. Chakra Marab, his sails unfurled, and they're reviewing the thing. And Troy says, well, it seems to be a point of contention between them. Perhaps something that Tamarian captain proposed that the first officer didn't like. Data says the apparent emotional dynamic does seem to support that assumption. As with the other terms used by the Tamarian, this appears to be a proper noun. The name clearly carries a meaning for them. Troy says, computer, search for the term DARMOK on all logistical databases for this sector. Computer searching. DARMOK is the name of a 7th century dynasty emperor on Kanda 4, a mythological hunter on Shanto 3, a colony on Melinda 7, a frozen desert on Tanza 5. Troy says, stop search. Computer, how many entries are there for DARMOK? Computer says 47. Troy says, all our technology and experience, our universal translator, our years in space, contacts with alien creatures that I can remember. Data says, I have encountered 1,754 non-human races during my tenure in Starfleet. Troy says, and we still can't even say hello to these people. That's correct, Data says. A single word can lead to tragedy, one misspoken or misunderstood. That could certainly happen here, Data, if we fail. Data says, replay at index 144. DARMOK at Tanagra. Freeze. Computer, search for the term Tanagra, all databases. Searching Tanagra, the ruling family on Gallus 2, a ceremonial drink on Larish 4, an island continent in Chantel 3. Stop. Chantel 3, computer. Reference the last entry with previous search. DARMOK is the name of a mythical historical hunter on Chantel 3. Troy says, I think we've got something. So the captain is looking at his diary or captain's log when he comes back, and that's when the creature shows up. He's like, DARMOK and JALAD at Tanagra. And because I was curious, I meant no harm. Deatham pushes the journal out of his arms. Shaka, timber, arms wide, timber. Dathan gives the dagger to Picard. Enough, I'm not going to fight, you just have to. And then he hears the creature. And then it occurs to him that the guy wants him to fight the common enemy with him. Guy A, Guy B come together, become friends, fight the third guy. It takes too long for them to get this. I wanted to say, so because Picard doesn't get that the guy doesn't want to fight Picard, he wants Picard to join him in the fight against the mythical creature. This reminds me, when they show the creature, he's like a clear glob, electrical, maybe energy creature. Stargate Atlantis, Season 2, Episode 12, Epiphany. John Shepard fights the same creature. I wonder where they got this idea from. Just saying. We're back on the Enterprise. Worf says sensors are picking up an electromagnetic disturbance approaching the captain's position. Riker says analysis. Worf says a variable induction field, possibly a life form. Riker says how close to the captain. Worf said the field is erratic, appearing and disappearing, but it appears to be moving toward them, attacking. And then Riker contacts LaForge. Riker to LaForge. LaForge here. How close we are to that transporter? 2, maybe 3 hours. Riker's like, right now. We need it right now. And LaForge is like, that's not likely, sir. Riker's like, I don't want to hear that, Commander. And then Geordi's talking to his worker. She actually has a name, Leffler. Leffler, what's the Renaissance frequency? Leffler says 3-4 over standard. LaForge says, I want a resolution of 5.3 at the very least, Commander. I need about 2 minutes. LaForge says, but there's a good chance this isn't going to work. Worf says, if it fails. Riker says, I know, we have tipped our hand to the Temerians, but if it's a chance we have to take. Worf says, agreed. Riker says, LaForge, proceed. LaForge says, we're on it. LaForge out. Riker to Transporter 1. And then we see our dear friend. We then see our dear friend Colin Meaney. And he says, O'Brien says, here, Commander. And Riker says, stand by, Mr. O'Brien. So then we're back on the planet. Dathon says, mirror up, his sails unfurled. And Picard's like, come on. And Dathon's like, chakra, when the walls fall. And then the creature is behind them and vanishes again. Shaka, when the walls fall. Picard says, Shaka, you said that before. I couldn't build a fire. Is that failure? And an inability to do something? DARMOK at JALAD. At TANAGRA. I remember the words, but I don't understand. So then we're back in engineering. LaForge says, matrix levels. Leffler says annual convergence 439.205. Confinement resolution 527. LaForge said that isn't going to do it. Increase the thermal input coefficient to 150%. Leffler says increasing now. Riker says status. LaForge says we're almost there, Commander. Leffler shunt the overload to the phaser transition sequencers in Transporter 1. Leffler says yes, sir. LaForge to O'Brien. O'Brien says go ahead, Commander. LaForge says, confirm phase sequence linkage. O'Brien says, linkage confirmed. Ready when you are, sir. So then we're back on the planet again. Dathon is saying, Uzi, his army at Lashmere. Picard says, at Lashmere, was it like this at Lashmere? A similar situation to this one we're facing? Dathon says, Uni with his army, fist open. Deshard said, a strategy with fist open. Dathon says, his fist closed. Picard says, with fist closed. An army with fist open to lure the enemy, with fist closed to attack. That's how you communicate, isn't it? By citing example, by metaphor. Uzi's an army with fist open. Picard opens the distance between them. And Dr. Saka's his eyes uncovered. That means he realizes, that Picard realizes how they talk, and now they'll be able to communicate, but it's too late because the people on the Enterprise either save Picard's life by doing this or they kill the other guy by doing this, but they attempt to rescue and it doesn't go well, and because Picard's not there to help the other guy gets severely injured. But because the other guy's ships don't rescue him for medical help. See, if they'd allowed the shuttle to land previously, there would have been medical help. They could have helped the guy live. He would have lived. But no, and because the other guy's ship wouldn't beam him back up, he was prepared to die. For communication, he was prepared to die. And if he would have allowed the people to land on the planet, he would have lived. He could have earned his communication, eyes wide open, and lived. But he doesn't. then Riker tries to contact the other ship and tell them that their captain is in trouble, and they don't care. They just ignore him. So then the guy is severely injured and on the ground, and he says Shaka, and Picard says when the walls fall. So then Riker and Data and LaForge and Troy are having a meeting. Riker has a voiceover view though. Officers log Stardate 4504.8. Our attempt to transport Captain Picard back to the ships has failed. My options are narrowing and my patience is all but gone. Riker tells them, here's the situation on Eldrel. The entity has moved off several hundred meters. Crusher says Picard's bioscans readings are stable. The Temerians are not. He may be injured, Troy says. Riker says if the entity decides to attack the Ken, the captain may be facing it alone. LaForge says the transport is out of the question. The Temerian ship has deepened the scouting field to D region of the ionosphere. There's no getting through. Worf says unless we attack the ship. Riker says, are you able to pinpoint the source of the particle beam? LaForge says they are using a polarity coil generator aft of their warp drive. It's pretty heavily shielded. Riker says, could we get through with our phasers? LaForge says, not with the first speed. It'll take a couple of hits. Riker says, that's not good enough. We need to knock out the scattering field in one shot and have the captain back on the Enterprise before they know what happened. LaForge says, if we selectively target the amplification pathways around the generator, it could be just as effective. We can do it in one burst. Riker says, how long will it take to set up? Worf and I will have to adjust the pre-fire chamber. That'll give us a focus we need. A few hours. Riker says, make it so. They leave. And then Riker talks to Troy. I would prefer to find a peaceful solution. If we could talk our way out of this one, that much better. Troy says, unfortunately, it may not be that simple. Riker says, what did you find out? And Data says, let's see if I can get a picture. Data says the Temerian ego structure does not seem to allow what we think of as self-identity. Their ability to abstract is highly unusual. They seem to communicate through narrative imagery by reference to the individuals and places which appear in their mythological history circle counts. Troy says, as if I were to say to you, Juliet on her balcony. Crusher says, an imagery of romance. Troy says, exactly. Imagery is everything to Temerians. It embodies their emotional states, their very thought process. It's how they communicate and it's how they think. Riker says, if we know how they think, shouldn't we be able to get something across to them? Data says, no, sir. The situation is analogous to understanding the grammar of a language, but none of the vocabulary. Crusher says, if I didn't know who Juliet was or what she was doing on that balcony, the image alone wouldn't have any meaning. Troy says, that's correct. For instance, we know that DARMOK was a great hero, a hunter, and that Tanagra was an island. But that's it. Without the details, there's no understanding. Data says it's for us to learn the narrative from which the Tanarians drawing their imagery. Given our current relations, that doesn't seem to appear likely. Okay, so the guy is injured. He's got him laying by a fire. Now, if they had had the shuttlecraft, or if they had allowed communication after this happened, he could have been healed. Crusher could have healed him possibly. But no, because the other captain or other first officer feels free to leave their captain down there. He's gonna die. He's gonna sacrifice himself for communication. Jana says DARMOK and JALAD at Tanagra. Picard says our situation is similar to this. I understand that, but I need to know more. You must tell me more about DARMOK and JALAD. Tell me. Use the words. Timber, his arms wide. When you give me the knife and the fire, could that mean give? Timber, his arms wide. DARMOK says, give me more about DARMOK. DARMOK on the ocean. Picard draws the circle, puts the rock in the middle. The ocean. DARMOK on the ocean, a metaphor for being alone, isolated. DARMOK on the ocean. Are you all right? Kinsey's children, their faces web. So, yeah, people are going to cry because he dies. Timber, his arms wide. Give me more about DARMOK on the ocean. Tanagra on the ocean. DARMOK at Tanagra, a county. Tanagra on the ocean, an island, timber his odd wise. So the two guys, maybe a ship, they travel to this island, they go to the island, and instead of fighting each other, they join forces to fight a third party. So there we go. So Picard finally gets it. He goes, and they left together, DARMOK and JALAD on the ocean. The ocean, another spasm. Zinda, his face black, his eyes red. Calamus at Bessar. You hoped this would happen, didn't you? You knew there was a dangerous creature on this planet, and you knew from the tale of DARMOK that a danger shared might sometimes bring two people together. DARMOK and JALAD at Tanagra, you and me here at Al Jadel. Instead of a battle, could I interest you in some fruit? A nice meal. A good Thanksgiving nice meal. Why did they have to fight? Why could they have sat down to a meal? A little food fight. I'm not much of a storyteller. Besides, you wouldn't understand, Shaka, when the walls fell. Perhaps that doesn't matter. You want to hear it anyway. There's a story, a very ancient one from Earth. I'll try to remember it. Galmish a king at Yurkra. He tormented his subjects. He made them angry. They cried out loud, send us a companion for our king. Spare us his madness. Inku, a wild man from the forest, entered the city. They fought in the temple. They fought in the street. Gamish defeated Endu. They became great friends. Gamish and Endu at Urk. Durin says at Urk. The new friends went into the desert together where the great bull of heaven was killing men by the hundreds. Endu killed the bull by the tail, and Gamish struck it with a sword. Gamish. They were victorious. The Endu fell to the ground, struck down by gods, and Gamish was bitter tears, saying, he who was my companion through adventure and hardship is forever gone. And then Damath dies. So then we get a voiceover by Riker. Despite the risk of war, I have no choice but to break the stalemate. Worf says, phasers nearly ready, sir. Riker says, stand by to fire, Mr. Worf. Data says the Temerian bioscan is becoming unreadable. He may be dead, sir. Riker says, if we know that, so do the Temerians. Riker to LaForge. LaForge here. Data, Riker says, I need those phasers. Data says, sensors are tracking the entity. It's approaching Captain Picard's position. So that back on the planet, Picard has out his knife, and he hears the beast roar. I understand the sacrifice, Captain. Fortunately, if our friend out there has his way, no one will ever know what you tried to do. And then we're back on the bridge again. So then the beast comes after the captain. The captain is successfully beamed up to the Enterprise. And they have a little firing thing. And they injure each other a little bit. And then Picard comes in and he says, he talks to the other guy. Temerian says, Zinda, his face black, his eyes red. Picard says, Tarmac the river, Temek in winter. Temerian says, Darmok? Picard says, Angelad, Temerica, Darmok, Angelad on the ocean. Temerian says, Sooth, his eyes open. Picard says, the beast of Tanagra, Uzi, his army, chakra when the walls fell. Picard opens up Dalmas' journal and they beam it away. Temerian says, Picard and Dalmas at Eldra, Mirab with sails unfurled. Picard opens up the dagger. Temba, his arms open. Temerian says, Temba at rest. Picard says, thank you. Data says, power has been restored, sir, and the transmission ends. And Riker says, new friends, Captain? Picard says, I can't say number one, but at least they're not new enemies. Okay, so then Riker comes in to give Captain his report. Picard is giving him the damage reports, and Riker says, Greek, sir? Picard says, oh, Homeric hymns, one of the root metaphors of our own culture. Riker says, for the next time we encounter the Temerians, Picard says, more familiarity with our own mythological might help us relate to theirs. The Temerian was willing to risk all of us just for the hope of communication, connection, but now the door is open between our peoples. That commitment meant more to him than his own life. But like I said, if he'd allowed the shuttlecraft in, They could have had medical supplies if they would have sat down to a meal. But I guess the guy did it the only way he knew how. So that ends uh, disc season 5, disc 1, our episode of DARMOK. 202. So we did Redemption, we did DARMOK today. Next week we'll do Ensign Row, the Bajoran, and the Silicone Avatar in 204. We're gonna get a new crewmate to replace Wesley Crusher for a little while. I still wish Will Wheaton had not left. And years later, it's years later, Will Wheaton says he really regrets leaving the series, that he should have went back sooner. So anyways, I thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Please hit the like and subscribe. Let me know I'm doing a good job. These Star Trek episodes used to be the highlight of my week. Now they're in the basement. I don't know what's going on, but I could use some help. Please check out Flashback Monday, and please check out my episode of This When following later this afternoon after this episode of Star Trek. Please hit the like and subscribe. Thank you.